Ask a home theater enthusiast what display technology is best, and dollars to donuts, they'll say OLED. They love to cite its perfect blacks, lifelike contrast, natural color, and near-instant response times. But they're a little quieter about its limitations. OLED gets expensive fast, especially at truly cinematic sizes, and even today's best models, they just can't match the sustained brightness of a premium mini LED TV. I'm not suggesting that they don't have reason to brag, but on the flip side, mini LED TVs offer larger-than-life screen sizes at far more accessible prices, along with eye-watering brightness. Now sure, that can come at the expense of perfect blacks, precise light control, uniformity, and motion clarity. For years, we've been waiting for a display that could, merge the best traits of OLED and mini LED without requiring the sale of a kidney. The Hisense UR8 SG is built around that very idea, using true red, green, and blue mini LED backlights in an attempt to deliver OLED-like image quality with the scale and brightness only LED-based TVs can provide. At under $3,500, the 100-inch UR8 undercuts its closest current generation OLED equivalent by a staggering amount. I'm sure LG's 97-inch G6 is great, but it's currently going for just under 20 grand. That's nearly 6 times as much. So I don't care how much of an OLED fanboy or cinephile you claim to be. A $16,500 price difference changes the conversation. I'd never spent any real time with an RGB mini LED TV before, so I wasn't entirely sure what to expect from the UR8. But within minutes, 3 things stood out. The energy-saving picture mode looks like Smurf poop, even while supposedly, sipping power. The TV is crazy bright, and its otherworldly saturation and contrast makes OLED look like ungraded log footage. But I rarely judge a TV based on its energy-saving mode. As soon as I switched over to the theater day in filmmaker mode, the blue cast disappeared, and the colors stopped looking radioactive, and the image immediately looked far more natural. Better still, both profiles measured well enough out of the box that most people won't have to touch a thing. More specifically though, both modes kept delta E errors below 3 across the board in SDR, meaning any remaining inaccuracies were unlikely to be visible. If I had one criticism, both lean slightly warm. So if skin tones, they look a little bit rosier or the image just a touch red, you're not imagining it. But here's where things got interesting. Using filmmaker mode as my starting point, I dialed the UR8 into near perfection, achieving delta E errors below 1 for both grayscale and color. In plain English, post-calibration, the Hisense was every bit as accurate as the finest OLED TVs we have ever tested. HDR10, just as accurate. Filmmaker mode measured within calibration tolerances right out of the box. Now, Dolby Vision IQ and Dolby Vision Dark were not quite as fortunate, both falling just outside acceptable limits, but Dolby Vision Custom calibrated to the same high standards. I achieved an SDR and HDR10. Of course, RGB mini LED has one potential problem OLED owners are more than happy to point out, and that's color crosstalk. In simple terms, this is when one color kind of bleeds into another or into the white, creating a colored halo. And yes, the UR8 does it. You can see it in test patterns designed to expose it, and sometimes even in static menus like the Apple TV home screen, especially where bright colors surround mostly white app icons. But during normal viewing, it is mostly a non-issue. I never noticed it with television broadcast, physical media, or anything played through the Kaleidoscape Strato K. The only time, and I mean the only time I saw the UR8 truly struggle was during one of my own YouTube videos where a patch of warm white briefly shifted towards pink for about 5 seconds. My best guess is that what I witnessed was triggered by the extreme compression YouTube applies combined with just large areas of warm white. So yes, crosstalk is real. But based on my experience, it isn't something most viewers are likely to notice. When it comes to brightness, this is where the OLED faithful start to get a little uncomfortable. And for once, Hisense isn't claiming to have, the brightest TV money can buy. They say the UR8 can hit 3,800 nits, and in my testing, it reached 3,850 with full screen brightness landing between 900 and 1,000 nits. Again, that is full screen. Even with peak brightness set to low, the UR8 still cleared 1,000 nits, while the medium approached 2,000. Whether you watch in a dark room or a brightly lit space, the UR8 has more than enough output. In other words, I can't imagine a room where the UR8 wouldn't be bright enough. What surprised me was how well the UR8 holds up off-axis. Light uniformity was excellent from edge to edge, and this is the first mini LED TV we've tested that comes close to matching the viewing angle of the best OLED displays. Now, compared to SQD mini LED TVs like TCL's QM7L and QM8L, the difference is night and day. Now, if you're in a space like ours with a lot of windows and other points of light, expect some reflections, even with the UR8's Obsidian panel, which is meant to have very low reflection so that dark pictures remain clear in any room and any lighting. I'll give Hisense some credit. On axis, it's better than previous models, but it's not the same as what you might get from one of Samsung's matte screens. The UR8 is still reflective, particularly when viewed off axis. Of course, measurements only tell you so much. None of it matters if a TV doesn't deliver with actual movies and TV shows. And I've got to tell you, even 4K Dolby Vision movies purchased through Apple TV, which are still a far cry from the bit rates available from physical media, they looked transformative on the Hisense. Heck, after reviewing TCL's X11L, I honestly wondered where TVs could possibly go next. Well, apparently, there's a whole other gear. The UR8 doesn't just make colors look brighter or more saturated. There's more depth, texture, and variation within those colors, which makes everything look more real. And skin tones, oh my God, may be the best that I've seen this side of a colorist studio in Hollywood. And I saw the same advantage when comparing streaming, UHD Blu-ray, and Kaleidoscape's new 4K cinematic format. And through the Hisense, the difference was surprisingly easy to see. Films I know inside and out, including F1 and Avengers Endgame, they felt new again when I compared all three versions side by side. And you want proof? Well, the UR8 reproduced 95% of the Rec 2020 and 100% of the slightly smaller P3 color space in my tests. By comparison, UHD Blu-ray still uses 420 chroma subsampling, meaning some color detail is just shared across neighboring pixels, to keep file sizes more manageable on that spinning piece of plastic some of us refuse to get rid of. Most TVs now, they do a very good job hiding this compromise, but the added texture, gradation, and color detail available from something like 4K Cinematic is just so much easier to see on the UR8. And before you say, oh, but my OLED, LG and Samsung's latest flagship OLEDs, as good as they are, reproduce roughly 78 to 83% of the Rec 2020 color space. That's more than enough for most UHD Blu-rays mastered within P3, but it may leave some of the wider color gamut available from 4K Cinematic on the table. Of course, not everything you watch is going to come from Kaleidoscape or even a Blu-ray player. Most of us spend a lot of time watching heavily compressed content like YouTube and live action such as Formula One, and the UR8 handled both brilliantly. Common issues like color banding and compression noise were kept well under control, which made even lesser quality sources look a little bit better than usual. Motion was another area where the UR8 pulled ahead of the TCL QM7L, QM8L, and even our reference Hisense U7. Formula One, it looked better. Not flawless, but noticeably cleaner and smoother, and I felt the same when gaming on my PS5. In testing, the UR8 showed very little ghosting at around 1,000 pixels per second, and even more demanding tests, approaching 2,000 pixels per second, still looked more than passable. If we're keeping score, the UR8 is brighter than even the best OLED TVs, delivers equally convincing real-world black levels and contrast, comparable accuracy in SDR and HDR, more measurable color, and motion that gets surprisingly close to OLED, even when gaming at higher frame rates. I don't know about you, but that adds up to a win in my book. My only real issue with the 100-inch model is that it clicks while in standby. And I reached out to Hisense and they told me a power relay is used to reduce the standby power consumption and protect the backlight and panel, improving long-term reliability. This relay may produce an occasional clicking sound during power state changes, and there's just no setting to disable it. If I may, occasional is doing a lot of work there. The clicking happens regularly whenever the TV is in standby, and with no way to disable it, owners will either have to tolerate it or just eventually learn to ignore it, as I did. As for how the UR8 compares with other RGB TVs, TCL and Sony have some pretty big shoes to fill if they hope to match the standard Hisense has just set. I'm hoping to have an answer for you soon, but both Sony's RGB Mini LED Bravias have been held up by shipping delays, and TCL's new RM9L has only just arrived. Now, I know people who review TVs for a living, myself included, love to say things like OLED is dead because, well, it gets clicks. But after living with the UR8 day in and day out for months, that claim doesn't sound nearly as ridiculous as it used to. Maybe I was a little early to OLED's wake, but make no mistake, RGB Mini LED looks like the future.